So this tutorial is about setting up a Stretchy Spline IK. First we want to orient the joints and then make sure all of our controls have their frozen transforms. And in setting up the Spline IK, you go to Skeleton, create Spline IK handle, select the first and then the last joints, and there we have the Spline IK handle. Then what I do is I will hide my joints and my IK handle just so that I can access the curve, and I'm actually going to hide all of these controls too. So I want to select the CVs here, and then I want to let me back up just a little bit. When you go to the IK, create Spline IK handle, you do want to have, I usually have auto simplify curve off because that will simplify the curve and make it so that you have less CVs on your curve. So I'll usually turn that off, and then root twist mode. If you do have any problems with your twist in your rig after you've set up the IK spline, then you can come back here and change this and mess with the way that your spline is twisting. Just know that that is a possible solution if you're running into issues with snapping and twisting issues. So here we go. In order to control these CVs, I select them and I select the CVs, and hold on, let me select the CVs here. And then I use there we go. Now that I've selected the CVs, use the that little secret hotkey, which is pretty nice. It's Control right click, and on a Mac it's Command right click, and then you select Cluster, and so that'll create objects here in your outliner that you can actually attach to. So now I want to bring everything back. We'll show everything that we just hid, and because now I have something I can control my curve with, so if I move one of these, you can see that the curve follows along. The joints do. And what I want to do now is make it so that these curves will drive those clusters. So I'm going to parent constraint these in order to the clusters. So driver and then driven. I want to constrain parent. Then I'll do that again and hit G just to repeat the last command. And we will jump to the next one for these. You can also do this with less control curves. So if I only had 2 control curves, I would parent all of these clusters to this first one, and then all of these clusters to the last one. And that works fairly well for controlling a pretty big spine or a similar joint chain. Okay, so now that I've got it all hooked up, you can see that I can move the spine with the curves, and for the most part, the joints are following along just as expected. But we don't have stretch enabled. So if I pull this past, you can see that it tries to follow, but it just does the best it can. It can't stretch with it. So we need to enable that. And I use the Hypershade. Usually, some people will use the node editor. I tend to like the Hypershade just because it's a little bit easier to navigate through and to hook things up. So you want to click on this button. I've already clicked on it. It allows you to show more than just materials in here. And then with your curve, you want to type in the mel command arclen for arc length, and then CHON and the name of your curve. So curve 1. So what that'll create is that'll create a curve info node, and it'll hook it to your curve. So if you look right here, here's all of our clusters, and then here's the curve information. We have the curve shape and the curve info node. And the nice thing about the curve info node is it will show you magically how long the curve is. So once you have that curve information, you can go into Utilities, Maya Nodes, go to Utilities, and drop down and find the Multiply Divide node. And there it is. And so we want to hook up the arc length with the input 1x. There it is. So the arc length input 1x. So now we have, and we're going to set our operator to divide. And I want to divide it against its original length. Because if it goes up to 10, 10 divided by 7.3 is about, 1.3 or 130%. So, and then if it's dividing by its original length, it's at 1, which is what I want the scale factor to be for each one of those joints. So you can bring your joints in by selecting the joints that are a part of the curve. So I want this joint. Yeah, I don't want this one because it doesn't need to scale. But I do want this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. Let's see. It's a little bit tricky. I do want that one to scale. And this may not have been the perfect example because I should have put another joint right here so that it would have a little bit of buffer between the scalable IK and what was left out here for, say, a jaw or something else on my rig. But I'm going to include that anyway. That joint will scale, and it may scale these up as well, but just remember in your rig you want to have an extra joint that kind of buffers, kind of like this is, but have an extra joint here so that it buffers the scale, because the scale will stop as it goes outside of this chain. So okay, so we're gonna move these with our scale. So I'm going to middle mouse drag them in here, and now I've got all of them here in the hypershade. And now I just need to select, I need to hook up the scale X to, so our scale X to the output X. So output X to scale X, output X to scale X, output X to scale X. I'll move these out of the way since I've already hooked them up. Bring these over. So I'll open up their scales. So now output X to scale X, and yeah, that one hooked up correctly. Then output X to scale X, output X to scale X, and lastly, last joint. Okay, so now we should be working just right. So if I select my curve and I move it, you can see that the joints are now scaling appropriately. And they're maintaining that really nice fall off. So no matter what I do to my curve, you can see that the joints just scale right along with it. And it maintains that same size. So now if you're rigging, a prop or whatever, you'll just easily be able to stretch out and get that squash and stretch that you so desire. Okay, and have fun with your squash and stretch spline IK.